Let's talk about Keon Coleman. I think we already
Yes.
know who Marvin Harrison Jr. is. The Florida State wide receiver who transferred from Michigan State, 6'4",
Yep.
215. My guy is built like a freaking power forward. He is just a dominant human being and a jump ball threat. We're going to break this down in a second. Any quick background here on Keon Coleman?
So looking at his background, Joe, one, it's not shocking that you say he's a power forward because he was a great basketball player. He's actually from Louisiana originally, and he was a big time recruit from a football perspective. I was looking at the recruiting profile here, and he was a near consensus 4-star. Okay, going to Michigan State, obviously. I just want to read this one blurb because this is just absolutely crazy. So 247 Sports had him rated as a 4-star. So did ESPN. Rivals didn't like him that much, Joe. He was rated as a 3-star player, number 59 wide receiver in the 2021 class. Which is wild, man. But Keon Coleman at 6'4", 217 pounds, he had legitimate Power 5 interest as a basketball player. Like I believe that Michigan State, I was actually entertaining the option of him playing basketball for the Spartans. I believe that was on the table potentially because he was just absolutely absurd. I was looking for, here he goes. Junior year, 26 point per game, 23.1 points per game as a high school sophomore. Like this dude was a legit dude. So obviously goes to Michigan State, plays really well for 2 years. I mean, especially his last year, he was the leading receiver for the Spartans. And then obviously transfer portal, comes to Florida State this year, was one of the biggest transfer portal targets just in general from a national perspective. Kid's an absurd basketball player, absurd talent, and he has developed into one of the better wide receivers in college football and is why. I mean, is there a mock draft right now that doesn't have Keon Coleman going in the first round? Like that's what type of prospect he has become now.
Yeah, and it's funny, before he transferred, I don't think anybody talked about him as a prospect, but the second he transferred and everyone watched him, they're like, oh, this kid's kind of good.
You know who talked about him, Joe? We talked about him on this show. We talked about him on this show.
We did talk. I think that I know some people will love to just scoff at us making this comment, but we were some of the first people in on him. But no one wants to believe that.
We both had him as top 5 wide receivers in the 2024 class before the season even started. Both of us had him in there. So
Keon liked my tweet where I ranked him as the number 2. So I'm big time. You guys all know that. Okay. In all seriousness, though, physically for a 215-pound, 6'4" receiver, you kind of do expect him to not be, super mobile, but fantastic linear acceleration. I don't think this is going to be a sub 4.4 guy. That's not going to happen, but can he go sub 4.5?
Yeah.
I think that's certainly on the table.
4.6, it's very 4.7, like somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah, I think he can.
At the very least, he is a low 4.5 kid. His ability to redirect, and I think his burst, his change of direction skills, it's not elite, but it's very good for a player of his size, which makes him a strong route runner. It makes him a threat after the catch to some extent. But as we've talked about here, what makes him so desirable and where there's not a lot of these guys, I think, in the NFL, why he's going to be desirable is he is a monster in the jump ball situations. His hands are fantastic. He is, a pluck the ball out of the air type of a player. There's a ton of plays on film where he's just one-handing things and just grabbing it out of the air like he's grabbing a baseball out of the air.
Yep.
It is unbelievable at times watching these guys in these situations. His production, it's weird. You would expect his production to have been way better this year after that first game that he had against LSU. It tapered off. He missed a couple games because of injury. I'm a little wary because of the production, but I still see a very physically gifted receiver that should go in the top 20 picks that is going to be maybe not a plug-and-play receiver that's elite in his first season, but within his first contract could be a highly, highly impactful player throughout the early parts of his career.
So, Joe, I have a mock draft coming out soon, and it'll probably be out by the time people listen to this, but I have him going number 5 overall in the 2024 NFL draft.
Wow.
I'm in on Keon, man.
You might be higher on him than I am.
Bro, I'm in on him, man. Joe, this is where I am with him, right? One, I don't think Jordan Travis is a great passer. I don't think he ever was. I think Jordan Travis is a playmaker at the quarterback position, which is great and really good for a college football team. I really like Jordan Travis as a college football player. but as a passer, he has his limitations, obviously, right? I mean, both him and Johnny Wilson are both sitting around like 600 something yards right now, where it's just like, those guys are better than that. Like, they're much better than that. But, and then obviously when he gets hurt, then you have Tate Rodemaker and Brock Glenn, and it's not a perfect situation from a quarterback perspective for a wide receiver right now. But the talent here is astronomical. I can make an argument that if Keon Coleman and Marvin Harrison Jr. hit their ceilings, that Keon Coleman might be a better football player at the end of the day. He might be down the line. It's possible. He has that type of profile to him because you mentioned one thing, 6'4", 215. He can jump out of the gym. He has got vice grips for hands, man. When his hands touch a football, that's completion. The game is over. And he is an incredible player in contested catches. But I think that some people are going to get it wrong with him because they're going to say he's a contested catch guy. I'm just like, no, he's not. No, he's not. That's just what he does really, really well. That kid is going to run fast. I think it's 4.4 mid, somewhere in that ballpark, 4.45, 4.46. I think he's going to run really well. People love comps. I think this kid is kind of comparable to Julio Jones. And not as fast as Julio, because I think Julio ran like 4.3 something. I'm not necessarily anticipating that Keon does that. But the things that made Julio special was Julio could out-leverage any defensive back for a football because he was massive, he could jump out of the gym, and he had strong hands. And I think that Keon could do those types of things. And I also think Keon's very flexible, man. I don't think we've seen the best version of him as a route runner. I think it's good right now, but I still think it could get a lot better. I do, because I think there's an attention to detail thing. I think there's an attack blind spot things. I also think there's a little bit of route tempo that needs to improve with him at times. Like, not everything has to be 100 miles an hour. He can kind of change tempos a little bit. And I really think that you can kind of lull some defensive backs to sleep and get a little bit more of easy separation at times. This kid could be special, man. I could not care less what the production is with him. 6'4", 215, 4.4 athlete, probably a 40-plus inch vert. This kid's special, man. He's a special talent. And if he goes in the right situation, I think he's going to be a superstar.
He is the type of guy that, like, the early 2000s, 2010s was just highly coveted by the NFL. He was one of those guys that every team was looking for. By description, this is an X receiver. Like, this is exactly what teams would always look for their X receiver. Big frame. When you needed a first down in a third and medium or long, you're looking his way and he's coming back to the football, and you know that he's going to box his way out to make a play on the ball. No matter who he's up against, he can do that. I agree with what you're saying. His ceiling is tremendously high, and just to add the qualifier for anyone who's going to be like, did he really just say that he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr.? No, that's not what we're saying. No. But we think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is closer to his ceiling right now. Yes. And we know what Marvin Harrison Jr. is. But Keon Coleman, if he improves, could be right up there with him. And this could be one of those draft classes with receivers where in 2 years' time, we're talking about how Marvin Harrison Jr. and Keon Coleman are both elite receivers in the NFL. This receiver class is going to be unbelievable to talk about anyways, because, you threw out all those names that we're going to end up mentioning at some point with Malik Neighbors and Xavier Leggett and, Emeka Ibuka. There's going to be so many other guys that could go in the first round or early second.
Yep.
That are going to be nice, solid pieces to receiver rooms. But for me, just right now, I see two guys that separate. I see two guys that far and away have so much potential to be in every single game, high impact player. And Keon Coleman definitely fits that.
I have, and I was just looking at my mock draft real quick. So I have 5, 6, 7. I have 7 wide receivers in the first round, Joe.
Wait, name them.
7. Name them. Okay, without the destinations involved, Marvin Harrison Jr. I have Keon Coleman. I have Malik Neighbors. I have Rome Odunze. I have Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, which I'm a big fan of, by the way. We'll have to talk about him. Yeah, dude, he's really, really good. I have Emeka Ibuka, which we've talked about a ton. I have A.D. Mitchell is my last one. A.D. Mitchell from Texas.
Wow.
So, yeah, man. It's last teaser. Chicago Bears on my mock draft. Number 1 and number 5 picks. Gave him Caleb Williams and then Keon Coleman. That would be some fun, man.
That would be fun.
With DJ Moore? With DJ Moore? Like, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That team can get so much better. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, folks. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more. Enjoy the rest of your week. Make sure you check out Bet Online for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.